America,
America,
and to the
to the
republic
republic
for
for
which
which
it
it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
and
and
justice for all.
Ah, nice. Okay. Amy, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Budnick,
Here.
Commissioner Perry,
Here.
Commissioner Scott,
Here.
Commissioner Wall,
Here.
Mayor Metzger.
Here. Okay, we're all here. First item on the agenda is public discussion, items not on the agenda. Is anyone on Zoom?
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that Jessica?
Yes, sir.
Hi.
Hello.
Wow, we see you. Wow, we see
Hi.
Can you? Okay. My name is Jessica Herzig. I live at 1 Sylvan, and I was wanting to read something to y'all as it relates to some of the recent announcements with closures for this summer. So bear with me if you would, please. Fear is a terrible thing. Irrational fear is a dangerous thing. It produces panic, and panic produces bad decisions and turns otherwise friendly and caring people into conflicted and unreasonable opponents when reason and working together is called for. This virus is producing irrational fear far beyond its medical damage. It's rending our community because of fear. We have allowed our fear to dictate unreasonable actions that have undermined some of our most sacred principles, such as personal freedom and community togetherness. We have let our response to this virus destroy businesses. It is keeping our children from their schools. It is producing the greatest unemployment in the nation's history and causing us to lose what civility and meaningful discussion we had left. Millions of families will not recover for years, maybe never. Our freedoms have been taken away and replaced with what is essentially a dictatorial state. Other countries like Sweden have chosen a different approach and are doing better than we in every way. Even our governor has recognized that continued lockdown is causing more harm than good. Yet the city of Pleasant Ridge, out of an unscientific fear, has chosen to extend a dictatorial state of emergency beyond reasonable considerations. It's time for people to choose their own actions about who can gather and what we can do. And I know this community is capable of doing this effectively. Opening the public facilities allows people to make their own choices and take their own risks. No one needs to be forced to use or work at any of those facilities and can stay locked in their homes for as long as they want to. But others who feel less fear should not be dictated to by the fear of others. When all this started, I believe we took appropriate action individually and as a city to keep this situation from overwhelming our medical system by going into quarantine. But now the best medical minds have told us this virus will now run its typical epidemic course, regardless of what we do. There will be spikes in recurrences, yes, but further strict quarantining will not prevent that. Let's face our fears together and return to a more normal life while we still have a normal life to return to. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there anybody else on the line? All right. Did anyone want to comment? Okay. Then, without any more public discussion, we'll move on to governmental reports. I see the chief. We have two chiefs. Who's going to take the lead this time? Oh, nobody wants it?
Sorry, I was on mute.
So
Chief
was I.
Nowak, do you want to go first?
Go ahead, Jack.
Okay, I just wanted to report, first on fires. In the last 3 weeks, we had 3 fires. One family of 6 were displaced, and that was from careless smoking. And the sad part is they didn't have any working smoke alarms. I keep putting that out there to everybody that I want everyone to check their smoke alarms. I'd really appreciate that. Now's the time to do it. People are quarantined. If you need assistance or need help setting them up, the fire department would be happy to help you. Also, another good thing to do now that people are quarantined is maybe go over a plan and a practice and escape plan. No 2 ways out of your home. Practice that with your loved ones, and just come up with a good action plan. And again, if you need help, the fire department's willing to assist anyone on that. They can go to the Ferndale.gov website and get the contact information for the fire department. The 3 fires we had, like I said, one was careless smoking, could have been prevented. Another one is under investigation on a construction site. Possibly some people lit some stuff on fire. And then another one is a party store in Royal Oak Township that appears to be some mechanical equipment that may have caught fire in the middle of the night. Nobody got hurt in any of these fires, though. Moving on to the COVID-19 report. I just wanted people to know, if they didn't know, there's a great resource at oakgov.com. You can click on the COVID tab to the left and then scroll down, and you'll see a bunch of gray little boxes. And one of them is for drive-through testing. If people want to get tested for free, there's several locations now in Oakland County. There's one to the north at the 1200 building, which is like the courthouse out at the Oakland County Complex. That one runs Tuesdays and Thursdays. I believe it's 9 to 5. I'm trying to look here. I need new glasses. The other one that's close to us is at Greenfield, just south of Catalpa. That's at the Oakland County Health Building over in Southfield, 27725 Greenfield. And they do it on Mondays and Wednesdays. And then if you want to go out to the west, it's out in Novi on Fridays. Also, the Joe Dumars Fieldhouse at the old State Fairgrounds in the Detroit side offers testing. And you can Google that to get the information. The testing is 7 days a week. And that one requires a prescription or a doctor's order for civilians. For first responders, you don't need the order. But I just wanted to throw that out there because there was a lot of people calling and asking if there were closer sites. And that would be the nasopharyngeal and oropharyngeal swabs. It's not the blood test. Other than that, I still want to stress that it's important, as we all know, we've been hearing on the radio and on the TV, that we still need to be doing our social distancing. We still need to be washing our hands and disinfecting our surfaces. So I just want everyone to be safe and try and bear with us through this. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Chief. Are there any questions or comments?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Chief Nowak, it's on to you.
Good evening, everybody. Just a couple things. We continue to get complaints of people excessive speed and the noise on Woodward. Know that Pleasant Ridge isn't the only city that's receiving these complaints. It goes all the way from Ferndale up into West Bloomfield. Many of these agencies have taken action to correct this. The Pleasant Ridge Police Department, over one weekend, we issued over 41 violations for speeding, careless driving, violating the executive order. One of the top speeds was 109 miles an hour on Woodward. Many of these are people that don't live here. They're coming from other areas. Many of them have modified exhaust systems. That's why the noise. We've had numerous cars in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I know that we have put a plan in place to enforce this. I'm not going to say when or where because people might be watching, but
They may be listening.
they may be listening. Know your enemy. The police department does have a plan in place. So we are hearing your complaints and we're taking action to correct that. But know that all the agencies on the Woodward corridor are experiencing similar activity. I understand the nice weather and being cooped up in your home, but Woodward Avenue is not the place to conduct your drag racing and excessive speed. We, like the Chief Pache says, we notice that people are maintaining social distancing throughout the city. Pleasant Ridge is known for the people that come, not just the residents, but other residents all around love to walk through town and look at people's homes and gardens. I see it all day, 24/7. People are maintaining distance, having their dogs on the leash and such. So that's good. We don't really have to remind anybody. We had one incident at our dog park where there was not social distancing going on, and that was handled as well. Other than that, the only thing I have to add is if you live in town and know you have an elderly neighbor or see that they might need some help, whether they need shopping done or their lawn cut or anything like that, feel free to email me or call me and we'll see if we can get that taken care of. I think it's especially a time to, we've seen many acts of kindness and good deeds, and it's a shame that it takes a pandemic of such to remind people of human values, but the police department is here to assist in any way, and I am more than happy to field emails and calls so we can help our residents out, that if anybody feels the need or sees that. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions for the chief? No? Nobody wants to talk about speeding. I think, what did I see, 140 or 180 down on Monroe, down on 75?
Wow. Yes, the state police got somebody down there at that speed.
Just amazing. Just amazing. All right. Well, no comments? Then we move on.
One more
to
here,
the-
Kurt.
What?
One more, Kurt. I have a couple comments.
Oh, please.
I did just want to address real quickly the decisions that we made with our rec programs and the pool this summer. It certainly wasn't a decision we took lightly by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a pretty unified response that we have across Oakland County, Southfield, Oak Park, Huntington Woods, us. We've all closed our local pools. Oakland County has closed their county pools for the summer. I get it. We're all struggling right now with the impacts of the pandemic. When we look at local decisions here, really, the biggest ones for us are, when do we open up our facilities? The community center is being governed really by the governor's executive orders. Once she gives the go ahead to open up the community, open up things like the community center with the fitness center, with the for renting it out, we'll follow the governor's orders on those. The pool's a trickier one. We can talk philosophically about trampling our liberty or something, making our own personal decisions about what we do or don't do. You can say that Sweden is an example, but they have more per capita deaths than we do in the United States. And their economy is contracting at the exact same rate as all of the other European countries. So we don't know that Sweden is a success story yet. We don't know if South Korea is a success story yet. We don't know if anything is a success story yet, because we're in month 2.5 of this whole process. South Korea they had essentially 0 cases for a long time. They started to ease up, and then all of a sudden they had 29 cases from one guy from this thing who was going around. And then, the way this thing spreads, it could have a R0 of 5 or 6, where that means every infected person infects 5 or 6 more. That's some of what the clinical studies are saying. And it's easy to say that, it's like, I probably won't be affected because I'm 42 or my kids are 11. So, okay. But, if you then pass that along to a 70-year-old, that's not okay. And we don't know what the long-term impacts of this are. You may not die from coronavirus, but could be long-term cardiac, long-term lung capacity impacts of this. Some of the recovered patients still have decreased lung function, 30% in some of the studies. So, is it easy to say, oh, well, whatever, it's like the cold? No, it's not. And so the fact that we're sitting here in month 3 of this whole process and that there is so much that we don't know, and maybe a year from now we find out that everyone recovers from this just fine and okay, we get on with it. But maybe there are longer term impacts that stick with people because of this. It's not a respiratory disease. It acts more like a blood disease. It's what some of the studies are showing. So until we know more about this and until we know more about how it spreads, the prudent course would be to wait to get more information. And that's what we and all the other pool operators around Oakland County all felt and believed. Now, the practical impact is opening up a pool isn't like opening up your backyard pool and saying, hey, okay, whoever wants to come over this Saturday, go for it. We have public health codes. We have laws we have to follow. When you enter the pool, you have to enter through a shower room. So we can't just say, oh, we're going to close the lobby, and instead you have to go through this gate over here straight onto the pool deck. That's illegal. We can't get lifeguards trained right now because the American Red Cross isn't training lifeguards. So we can't staff the pool with lifeguards. So we can't open the pool because we don't have lifeguards. So I just don't want people to be too cavalier about saying that we're rushing into anything. We're not. We're looking at this in a calculated way of, one, we don't know when the Red Cross is going to start training lifeguards again, when we can staff up to open the pool, how we would keep our pool staff safe. Sure, 80% of the fatalities from this are 65 years and older, but 20-year-olds still die from this. And I don't necessarily want to endanger any of our lifeguards so that we can decide if we want to go swimming or not. So I think for this year, the pool is closed. Now, next year when we're sitting here, and if this whole thing is still going on, which it probably will be, we will certainly know a lot more about how to manage this and how we can manage it safely, because we'll have to. But time is our teacher right now, and we're just feeling our way through this early phase. And when you see some of these places that open up and then they have to re-implement lockdowns because of the way that this thing flares back up very quickly, we're just not ready yet to gamble anything here. And that's the decision that we and all of the other recreation departments and pool operators in Oakland County have made at this time. So we're confident we stand by that decision. I understand people can disagree with that, but that's where we are. And we did this in consultation, of course, with the City Commission and all of our other Oakland County Health Department resources. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone understands that this wasn't just something that we rolled out of bed one morning and said, I don't think we're going to open a pool this year. It was something that we, agonized over. And I don't know how many hours of conference calls Shawnee was on with pool operators from around the country over the past, month or two. But it's been a lot. So I'd be happy to answer any questions or anything that I missed there with the City Commission. Please let me know.
No, I really appreciate that, Jim. I thought you had done a great job in the announcement that was up on the city's website, and that we made sure that everybody saw copies of it. Was well documented. I know that I've seen a lot of the work that Shawnee and Greg put together in terms of all their contacts and all their follow-ups. And if anybody needs any reassurance or any proof that the city did a lot of background research and a lot of thinking about this, I'm sure they can be inundated with some of the information that you two have put together.
I feel the same. I appreciate all the work and all the hours that you put into it and research. I think it was a safe, prudent thing to do.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. And also for your detailed explanation about sort of the funding and the budgetary impacts, so that people could sort of understand that tax dollars aren't being wasted, but maintaining and, helping move things forward, at the same time. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, that's a good point, Ann. Thank you. One of the things, and not everyone lives their life through Facebook. So for anyone who might be watching this meeting and didn't see that, One of the questions we got, I think it's a fair question, is, well, okay, we're not opening the pool. Are we going to get a refund on our taxes, or what's happening with that money? So just real quickly, I'll give the 30-second run through on this. The pool and fitness center millage supports both the operations of the community center, the fitness center, and the pool every year. And so we have to still heat and fix and repair the building and keep everything maintained and in good shape. The pool operations, what we're avoiding for the cost this year operationally is staff time, water, and chemicals. So all of those together add up to about $40,000 of operational costs that we're not going to incur. And so instead we have I think it's 16-year-old pool now. And as you know, a pool is a hole in the ground you throw money into. So being 16 years old, there's just always things that we need to fix and maintain. So we're taking that money and we're reinvesting in some capital projects so that we keep this thing in good shape going forward. Every year there's a list of things that need to be done, and we get to 60 or 70% of them, just because that's what we have the budget to cover. So now we can get ahead a little bit. The other thing we're going to do, and I know I'm way over 30 seconds, but the other thing we're going to do is at the wellness center, instead of leasing our fitness equipment, we're going to buy. That's going to save us about $6,000 or $7,000 a year over the long run. And it'll give us a little more flexibility in what kind of equipment we get in the fitness center. So, that'll be another improvement that we make for the long haul. So thank you for bringing that up, Ann.
Are there any other comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks to Jim. You were very thorough, and I appreciate all of your care and concern for the residents and answering all of my questions. So I feel comfortable with your decision, and thank you for all you do and your hard work around this. I know it's not easy to think this through all the time. There's so many moving parts, so really appreciate it.
Yeah. It's tough, but thank you. And we're certainly not lockdown police. We had a tennis court thing. We've chosen to keep the tennis courts open because we believe that people can choose to use those in a responsible way. So we've kept the tennis courts open. We're committed to maximizing the opportunity people have to get outside in ways that we believe people can handle that safely. But the pool is a lot more than just your own personal decision for what you do and don't want to do. It impacts everybody else, in particular our city staff. So.
And it's probably worth mentioning that there's a lot of activity happening in the city right now. Although it's happening on sidewalks, people are walking their dogs. We see people gathering in a very responsible way, as just getting some exercise in and things. So I don't think that the community spirit is lost in any way through this exercise. If anything, it's actually brought some folks even closer together. So it is an opportunity to check up on your neighbors. It's an opportunity to take some time at home that you might not have had normally at home. And so there's some benefit to get out of this, even though it's understood how hard of a time this is for a lot of people.
I have one more question. I'm sorry, Jessica. And maybe y'all kind of answered it. The Gainsborough Park playground, that will open based on the governor's executive orders. Is that correct?
So that one we closed down because of the county. The county ordered playgrounds closed. I don't know that the governor has ever specifically addressed playgrounds. So that's an instance where we're just taking our cues from a higher level of government. The county certainly has more public health resources than Pleasant Ridge does. So once the county says that we can open those up, we will. And we've also been in discussions with all the surrounding communities about how we're all going to handle playgrounds. Even some of the other communities we're talking about trying to bring people in to clean and disinfect play equipment. But I don't really think that's really going to do anything. That's going to be a situation where once we get the word that we can open those up, we will. And, it's up to you to use those responsibly and make sure that you wash your kids' hands after they use them, and to take all of those personal, hygiene things seriously. So yes, we'll take our cues from above on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jessica.
Anything else before we move on? Okay. All right. Then we'll move on to the next item, which is the proclamation declaring the first Friday in June as National Gun Violence Awareness Day. I feel this is important enough that I'm going to read. You're going to have to excuse me for a couple minutes as I read the official proclamation. I know you all enjoy listening to my proclamation reading. This proclamation declares the first Friday in June to be National Gun Violence Awareness Day in the city of Pleasant Ridge, to honor and remember all victims and survivors of gun violence, and declare that we as a country must do more to reduce gun violence. Whereas every day more than 100 Americans are killed by gun violence, and on average there are more than 13,000 gun homicides every year, and whereas Americans are 25 times more likely to die by gun homicide than people in other high-income countries. And whereas in Michigan has 1,187 gun deaths every year with a rate of 11.8 deaths per 100,000 people. Michigan has the 30th highest rate of gun deaths in the US. And whereas gun homicides predominantly occur in cities, with more than half of all firearm-related gun deaths in the nation occurring in 127 cities. And whereas cities across the nation, including Pleasant Ridge, are working to end senseless violence with evidence-based solutions. And whereas protecting public safety in the communities they serve is the mayor's highest responsibility. And whereas support for the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens goes hand in hand with keeping guns away from people with dangerous histories. And whereas mayors and law enforcement officers know their communities best, are the most familiar with local criminal activity and how to address it, and are best positioned to understand how to keep their citizens safe. And whereas the pandemic facing America has drastically impacted communities and individuals sheltering in place, which may result in situations where access to firearms results in increased risk in intimate partner violence gun deaths, suicide by gun, and unintentional shootings. Whereas in January 2013, Hadia Pendleton, a teenager who marched in the presidential inaugural parade and was tragically shot and killed just weeks later, should be now celebrating her 23rd birthday. And whereas to help honor Hadia and the more than 100 Americans whose lives are cut short every day, and the countless survivors who are injured by shootings every day, a national coalition of organizations has designated June 5th, 2020, the first Friday in June, as the 6th National Gun Violence Awareness Day. And whereas the idea was inspired by a group of Hadia's friends who asked their classmates to commemorate her life by wearing orange. They chose this color because hunters wear orange to announce themselves to other hunters when out in the woods. And orange is a color that symbolizes the value of human life. And whereas anyone can join this campaign by pledging to wear orange on June 5th, the first Friday in June in 2020, to help raise awareness about gun violence. And whereas by wearing orange on June 5th, 2020, Americans will raise awareness about gun violence and honor the lives of gun violence victims and survivors. And whereas we renew our commitment to reduce gun violence and pledge to do all we can to keep firearms out of the wrong hands and encourage responsible gun ownership to help keep our children safe. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Mayor Kurt Metzger of the city of Pleasant Ridge declares the first Friday of June, June 5th, 2020, to be National Gun Violence Awareness Day. I encourage all citizens to support their local community's efforts to prevent the tragic effects of gun violence and to honor and value human lives. Okay, with that, I'm going to ask if there's a motion to approve the proclamation.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the proclamation.
I'll
Okay,
second that.
all right. Any discussion? May we take a vote?
Commissioner Wall,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Budnick,
Yes.
Commissioner Perry,
Yes.
Mayor Metzger.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you.
Mayor, could I say something?
You may.
I want to thank the resident who is on wearing her orange t-shirt today. Thank you
Hi,
very
Deb.
much.
Hi, Deb, how are you?
Hi, thank you very much. I'm actually a former resident, but I did assist several of your city members to request a proclamation. And from the bottom of our hearts at Moms Demand Action, we thank you very, very much.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for coming to our meeting.
Thank you.
This is just too important. Yes.
Mhm.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. We have a number of items. I will not read any more proclamations, but I will just mention that there's incorporated in the consent agenda is a resolution recognizing May as Mental Health Awareness Month, and also a proclamation declaring Friday, May 15th, 2020 as Police Memorial Day, and May 10th to 16th, 2020 as Police Week. With that, I move, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mayor, I move that the consent agenda be approved.
Is there support?
I second.
Any discussion? Okay, we will take a vote, please.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Perry,
Yes.
Commissioner Budnick,
Yes.
Commissioner Wall,
Yes.
Mayor Metzger.
Yes, motion carries. The next item on the agenda is establishing public hearings on Tuesday, June 9th, 2020 at 7:30 p.m. to solicit public comment on the following. One, the proposed fiscal year 2020 to 2021 millage rates. And the second is the proposed fiscal year 2020-21 combined city budgets. Jim, I think this goes to you.
Yes, thank you. And let me share my screen. Okay. Okay, so we have the introduction of our 2021 budget and our millage rates. So we'll talk about millage rates, some trends. We do a 3-year budget, so we'll talk a little bit about what we're foreseeing down the road from the economic side of the coronavirus experience we're all enjoying right now and how that's going to shake out economically for us, revenues and expenditures overview, and then we'll talk a little bit about utility rates. So the process is we tonight set a public hearing for June 9 to consider approval of the budget. It is available on the website review as part of this packet. We'll also be posting it separately as its own standalone on the website, so any interested resident can have a look through the budget document in advance of the June 9 public hearing. We would take action in June, and then it becomes effective on July 1. So the headline is for millage rates. The 2019 city millage rate was 21.412 mils. The proposed 2020 millage rate would be 21.4531 mils. And this includes all of these separate millages, which together form the city portion of the millage that residents pay. So see that most of these have been rolled back. Our millage rollback factor this year was 0.9855. That means we need to reduce the maximum millage we can levy by 1.45%. We saw property tax revenue allowed growth is allowed at 1.9% by Headley. Meanwhile, our taxable value in the city grew by 4.3%, largely by homes that were sold, becoming uncapped, and the taxable values increasing to current market value. So that always causes, or normally in most years, causes taxable value to grow at a rate faster than city property tax revenue is allowed to grow by the Headley Amendment. So what happens is you have to reduce your millage rate to account for that. The reason our millage rate is increasing slightly is because of the phase-in of the police pension millage, which was passed in November of 2017. And you see that that was that in phases in at 0.35 mils per year. So we're in the third year of a 4-year phase-in. We're at 1.05 mils right now. Next year, that will phase into its full levy, which will be somewhat less than 1.3 mils because that has also been reduced by Headley over the years. So our highlights, we are planning for state revenue sharing decreases in fiscal year 21. And when I say fiscal year 21, I mean the year beginning on July 1, 2020 and ending on June 30, 2021. So in fiscal year 21, we are planning for state revenue sharing to decrease. I don't know if we've planned for it to decrease enough based on some of the early projections, but the state has not put out any estimates for what they think that's going to be. They do a conference process a few times a year where they get some economists and everyone together, and that's how they do a lot of their budget process. And I believe they have one of those coming up. So we should know more about what they're projecting for state shared revenue in the coming days. It's not going to be pretty. So we planned on our state shared revenue to decrease by about 10%. For us, state shared revenue is a pretty small portion of our budget. Just by the nature of Pleasant Ridge being a highly residential community, most of our revenues come from property taxes. So their property taxes take longer. If there is some sort of long-lasting economic impact on the economy, what would likely happen is property values in Pleasant Ridge would start to decline, like we saw in the 2008 financial crisis. We don't know how this is going to impact property values. We're in very early days in this whole process. We don't know how the economic impacts of this are going to shake out. We don't know what kind of stimulus packages are going to be. In general, Pleasant Ridge, our residents are typically upper middle class professionals who have been less impacted by this than some other communities. So will our property values decrease? We don't know. But what we did do is we looked at the total decline after the financial crisis, and our taxable property value went down by about 15% total from the peak in 2008 to the low in 2012. And the way property taxes work, it takes a while for those to filter through the system. So that took 4 years after the financial crisis for the full impact of that to hit. This time around, we're budgeting for fiscal year 22 as if we lose 15% of our tax revenue. So this is what we think to be a pretty reasonable worst case scenario. Certainly there are scenarios which are worse than this, but we think that this is a pretty bad scenario to budget for. And so we have made revenue and spending adjustments in order to balance the budget based on an assumed large tax revenue decrease for fiscal year 22, which would be next year. For this year, our tax revenues are pretty locked in based on assessments for this current year, because property tax assessments come out. Those are finalized in March, and then that's what we base our property tax bills on for the coming fiscal year. So those won't be changing dramatically for fiscal year 21. That'll start to hit in 22 when home sales start to filter through the assessment and equalization process. The pension millage phases in at 1.05 mils this year, so we're seeing revenue of about $110,000. We have police pension expenses of $255,000, so that's just allowing us to contribute more to the police pension fund to bring that up to a higher funded level. We'll get our current actuarial report on that shortly here, but it was 47% funded last year, the police millage. So we've stopped it from declining. As we continue to make extra contributions to that, we will start to bring that funding level up over time. Our total millage rate, you can see the impacts of this over time and how that's changed, and we've been fairly stable now for the past 5 years. When we talk about millage rates, we're talking specifically about our Pleasant Ridge portion of the pie, where that 21.45 mils is what you pay to Pleasant Ridge on your property taxes. But your total property tax assessment, the city of Pleasant Ridge only sees a little less than half of that. And this is where all of those property taxes you pay, how that breaks down. And you'll see that we are the largest taxing jurisdiction. The next is Ferndale Schools. Then county is 9%, the intermediate school district 7%, and then you have the community college, SMART, and then that other 2% is the metro parks, Oakland County parks, the DIA, the zoo, those other very small individual entities. Comparatively speaking, when we look around the region, you'll see this is where we fall with our local millage rate. I think one thing you'll see that's interesting is the cluster of residential communities: Sylvan Lake, Walled Lake, Pleasant Ridge, Lathrop Village, Huntington Woods, even Clawson to some extent. All highly residential communities with no major industrial base, where residential property taxes have to fund what the city does. Some of the other cities, when you look down, you see Novi and Rochester Hills and Auburn Hills. Those communities have larger industrial bases. And studies have shown that industry, for every dollar it generates in property tax value, only requires about 20 cents in public services. So industry is a great way of subsidizing the operations of a city for the residents, and you typically see lower tax rates in cities that have a lot of non-residential tax base. So when we look at our general fund revenue by source, inflation adjusted over time, it's pretty similar. This is adjusting everything into 2020 dollars. And we always hover right around that $3 million a year general fund revenue. You do see the impacts of the financial crisis starting in 2008. And again, we got down to that trough in 2012 when the impacts of property value declines fully phased in. When you look at general fund revenue by source, the most interesting thing here I'd point your attention to is the orange portion, which is state shared revenue. When you look at 1985-86, state shared revenue was almost 25% of the city's total revenues. And that just gets smaller and smaller and smaller over time to today, where it's about 7% of our revenue. So we've had to make up for the losses and decreases in state shared revenue with increased property taxes, because there's really nowhere else we can go for revenue. So that's one of the things that the state has done, is shifted a lot of the funding burden onto local communities for local government. And this graph shows that same process. The blue line is the absolute number of dollars that the state gave us that year for shared revenue. The orange line is adjusting that into 2020 dollars. So on a real inflation adjusted basis in 1985, really through 1990, the state was giving us $600,000 a year. And now we receive about $250,000 a year from the state. So that's quite a decrease. And you can see what really happened is when Michigan entered our one state recession for 15 years in 2001, the state really cut deeply into shared revenue, because you can see that orange line decrease pretty steeply from 2001 to 2005, and it never recovered. Pleasant Ridge local property values. You can see here the assessed property value, and that's the true market value of homes in Pleasant Ridge. And the blue line is taxable property value. You may be aware that when you live in your house, your taxable property value can only go up by the rate of inflation every year. So the assessed value is the true market value of your house, whatever you could sell it for. So your house may go up 10% in value on the market, but if inflation is 2% that year, your taxable value can only go up 2%. So usually what happens is you build up this gap in between assessed property value and taxable property value. So that's why assessed property values declined far more than taxable property values after the financial crisis. Then again, assessed property values went back up to market value, while our taxable property values slowly went up and go up at a lower rate. So again, a comparative graph here. When you look at total city revenue per person, Pleasant Ridge, we're sort of right there in the middle, and with Huntington Woods, again, we're always right next to Huntington Woods and everything. But Orchard Lake, Huntington Woods, Sylvan Lake, Wixom, again, we're pretty similar with some peer communities in terms of the revenue per person we generate. All of those communities are a little bit more high service communities. So the revenues needed to support that show through. And then similarly, expenses per person, there's a pretty high grouping here. Bloomfield is way out there. And then you have Birmingham, and then there's kind of the rest of us. Some other interesting points: police spending per capita. You can tell what you value by what you spend your money on. And so we clearly invest in our police very strongly here in Pleasant Ridge. You will notice that those communities, Farmington, Huntington Woods, Novi, Bloomfield Hills, Oak Park, Berkeley, those are public safety. So that will show up in a different slide. They don't have police or fire. They have public safety that is both. That's why they're also down at the bottom for fire. Our contractual arrangement with Ferndale, you can see that we do have a very efficient fire spending per capita. We're on the lower end there. When you look at public safety, this is fire plus police together. We fall, again, at the upper end of the curve, but here the communities cluster together far more. And finally, parks and programming. Huntington Woods and Pleasant Ridge, we are resort communities. So that's the overview of the budget. One of the things I didn't highlight was capital investments. One of the things is we pulled back on capital investments as part of the budgeting process for this year, just to be a little conservative. We do have the pavilion projects, which are underway at the pool right now. And then the Gainsborough Park Pavilion, those were funded. Those we had set money aside for. And so we are going forward with those, and we're going to complete those projects. But we don't have anything else on the board in terms of major capital projects, other than some water utility projects, which we'll talk about in the water utility rates, because that is a separate item. Those are funded through the water fund. In terms of city capital projects, it's a lot of maintenance right now. We have a lot of road maintenance projects, and that's what we're going to be focusing on, is just keeping what we have in good shape now and not programming expensive new projects for the foreseeable future. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions that the commission or anyone else has on the proposed budget.
Jim, thanks for that presentation. I'm going to go back to the usual suspects, and that's the Prop A Headley. We know what it did. You know, you went through the recession and the 2008 recession, and it took 4 years to kind of the property values to go down. And I know some communities, Hazel Park and some of the others, have just about gotten back to square one in just recent years. Is there any possibility that somebody is going to finally, I'm not sure with the legislature, the way it's set up right now, is anybody going to address this? Because the state's not going to have the money. The feds aren't looking like they're too quick to write any more money for states and local governments. What are we going to do? I mean, are they going to let cities go through this same process of going, losing property values and then going through this horrible cost of living coming to try to get back? If you're talking about a 15%, I think a 15%, hopefully we don't go that far. I think it's a good guesstimate. But if we go 15%, it's going to take us forever to get back, So.
You're right. So it's unlimited in how much you can lose in terms of your tax base in a year, but we're always limited when you start going back up. So you can fall off a cliff, but then when things recover, tax revenues can only go up, very slowly. So this topic it's just not being talked a lot about right now. I mean, everyone's focusing on revenue sharing and what the impact on the state budget is and all of that. These property tax questions are well down the road, so nobody's really focusing on them. But they're going to have to. And one of the really kind of wicked things about this is that even Dick Headley, the author of the Headley Amendment, when Prop A came into effect and had that combined impact that it does, he said, "Oh no, that's not how it's supposed to work." So when Prop A was approved by the voters in '94, and the legislature then had to write the specific law to put it into effect, they left out one sentence, and I should go back because Headley by itself is fine,
right?
It worked. Prop A by itself would be fine. But it's the combination of Prop A and Headley together that really causes all the problems. And there's a one sentence fix that the legislature could put into effect that would solve probably 80% of the problems, because The issue is that local government can't benefit from financial good times. When the economy is good and home values are increasing, home values may go up by 10% in a year, and that's great. But we're limited to what our property tax revenue can go up. And so what ends up happening is, if your taxable property value goes up 10% because you have a lot of homes that sell and your community is doing well, the overall city tax rate goes down. So it ends up being a tax cut in most years for most residents. And that's not a bad thing. But when you can't catch up for all that revenue you've lost, and you can't provide good public services, and you can't pay your police, your firefighters, or invest in your roads, that becomes a bad thing for the public in general. So one of the things that the legislature could do, and the MML has been working on this, part of the problem is once you get a state representative or a state senator sort of fully up to speed on this, they're termed out, and then they go run for Oakland County something or another. And then you have to start over again with all the new guys who just got elected because of term limits. But what they could do in the legislature would be to say that increases in taxable value due to home sales are exempt from Headley rollback. Because right now, when your neighbor's house, who, the folks who live there for 30 years, and it's assessed a taxable value of $100,000, and it sells for $400,000, and so the taxable value jumps to $200,000. If you just said that $100,000 jump is exempt from Headley rollback, that solves your problem, because the new people are going to pay taxes on $200,000 no matter what. All that does is eliminate the automatic built-in tax cut that the other 1,025 homes in Pleasant Ridge get. And when I say tax cut, I'm talking about, $4 maybe a year or something, like even less than that. Really, it's more pennies on the year. That would solve the problem. That's all they have to do. And the legislature can do that. It doesn't take a vote of the people. So I don't know. I don't have a lot of hope, really. No. We'll just be back again, going out probably for more stabilization millages, us and everybody else, to make up what we've lost. I hope we don't have to.
I hope not either. Are there any other questions, comments? Anything for Jim? Here comes Brett. No? Oh, no. All right. Well, with that, I will ask if there is a motion to approve the public hearing.
Mayor?
Yes.
Sorry, I have a different setup, so it's a little confusing. Your Honor, I move that the public hearing be established for Tuesday, June 9th, 2020 at 7:30 p.m. to solicit public comments on the proposed fiscal year 2020-2021 millage rates and the proposed fiscal year 2020-2021 combined city budgets.
Is there support?
Support.
Any further discussion? May we have a vote, please?
Commissioner Perry?
Yes.
Commissioner Scott?
Yes.
Commissioner Budnick?
Yes.
Commissioner Wall?
Yes.
Mayor Metzger?
Yes. Motion carries. I just wanted to say that Jim does write such a good executive summary, or at least the introduction to every budget, that if you do nothing more, go on the city's website and pull down the budget document and read the introductory, the overview and everything else that Jim does. Of course, he has all those wonderful charts that I love. Especially when I was asking about that chart where the orange and blue lines have gotten wider and wider and wider apart in terms of taxable value. And but I think it's an interesting read just to get a feel. I mean, it's always interesting to see where your taxes go, but just to get a feel of historically what has happened and what are the components of the current budget and what are our major plans for the year, issues around our goals and objectives. There's a lot of good information there. So anybody that's interested, I encourage you to just go and read it. So
I agree. You make a very, something that may not be quite as compelling, very compelling, Jim. So thank you. But also thank you for, when we had our budget workshops and stuff, you helped really, we're diving into what could happen, and we were just getting into the COVID thing at that point. And I know there's a lot of unknowns. So thank you for really diving in and trying to figure out what could be.
Without a crystal ball, you did a good job.
So there you go. Even with a crystal ball, you did a good job. Next item is the 2020 to 2021 utility bill rates. It's going back to you, Jim.
Okay, let me share over again.
Okay.
Okay, so tonight we will be asking the City Commission to adopt the utility rates for fiscal year 21. The proposed rates are a ready-to-serve charge of $42.50 per bill, a combined water usage rate of $78.75 per bill, a garbage pickup fee of $23.20 per bill, and a stormwater runoff fee of $48.50 per equivalent residential unit per bill. So our capital improvement projects, this is one place where we do have some capital improvement projects coming up and that we have no choice but to do. One of the things is our finishing up this year, cleaning and televising our sewers. So we're in year 4 of a 4-year project. Once we're done with this, all of our sewers will have been cleaned and inspected. And this is a 10-year rolling cycle. So we've been doing the cleaning and televising, and then we've been making some spot repairs where necessary. Fortunately, it wasn't unexpected, but the results for the first 3 years identified a few small areas, small segments of sewer where we did a lining process to reinforce the existing sewer. We didn't have any major problems. Everything was functioning like it was supposed to. Everything was functioning well. And this allows us to make some repairs to nip any potential problems in the bud before they become more major issues. The other project, which has been delayed a little bit by the COVID process, is a water meter and meter head replacement project. In your basement, you have a water meter, and on top of it is a transponder head, which takes the reading from the meter and then broadcasts that so that we can read that. That's how we send you your water bills. So those transponder heads are getting close to 20 years old now. And so the batteries in those start to wear out and they need to be replaced. Our meters are also 25 years old now. And the meters we have, they're guaranteed to be accurate for, I think it was 6 years. So once you start getting to 25 years old on a meter, it starts to lose accuracy. So while we were there, we are going to be changing water meters with the transponder head. In order to do that, we need to, of course, get into everybody's basement. And that's not a project that we are aggressively pursuing right now with COVID and the stay-at-home order and everything. But this is a project that we want to get done. We had slated for this coming budget year, and we want to get it done this coming budget year. So the water rate does incorporate those projected capital improvement costs. The other thing that it starts to incorporate, in a way a little bit less now with the impacts of the coronavirus, we pulled back on this, but we cannot avoid it. The state has passed administrative rules that require that we replace at public expense all lead service lines in the city. We estimate this to be $12 to $15 million. It could be a $20 million project, but we just don't think we can even remotely afford that. So the minimum to get this done is probably $12 to $15 million. And what does this all include? Well, there's 2 portions to the lead service line. The service line is the lead that goes from the water main to your house. And there's 2 portions to that. There's the public portion, which goes from the water main to the stop box, and the stop box is usually somewhere around the sidewalk. So that's the public portion of that. And then there's the private service lead. The private is on the house side. That's owned by the homeowner. It goes from the stop box to the water main. Well, the state has said that the city, the public water utility, has to replace all lead service lines public and private, at public expense. So in Pleasant Ridge, we've got 700 lead service lines out of about 1,125 houses. That's about 2/3. And I'm not aware of another city anywhere that has that level. So we've been in preliminary discussions with Eagle about how we can handle this project. We are unlike anyone else in terms of the impact that this is going to have on the community. The other thing is that we have not had to replace a lot of water mains in Pleasant Ridge because of our sandy soils. In a lot of neighboring communities, they get water main breaks because it's clay soils, and those tend to be very stable until they're not, and then they fracture, and it breaks water mains. With the sandy soil, the water mains tend to just kind of float around. There's no sudden breaks on those. So our water main infrastructure, and our mains are all iron, ductile iron, those are not lead, but our mains are all 80 to 100 years old. And so those can become brittle. And when we have a street where you've got 55 out of 65 houses have a lead service line, and you have to now drill 55 new taps into that old water main, it's inevitable that we're going to have water main issues, just because when you're tapping into old infrastructure. So we're also going to need to do water main replacements as part of this lead service line replacement. So that's why it starts to get very, very expensive. When we talk about $12 to $15 million, our annual total water fund budget is about 1.3 million in any particular year. And that's for the cost of water, but that's also to treat all the sewage, that's to treat the stormwater. Our capital spending on water and sewer projects is typically somewhere in the range of $40,000 to $80,000 a year. So if over 20 years, like the state says, we have to replace all these, if you take a $12 or $15 million project over 20 years, that's a $700,000 or $800,000 or $900,000 per year increase. So that would be basically taking our water fund and increasing our water fund budget by, I agree, by 60%. So imagine what water rates would be. So we're trying to figure out how we can handle this. We're trying to work with the state to get some relief or figure out some financing. They can allow us to do this over a longer period of time than 20 years, which would be very helpful to spread this out over time to reduce that rate shock. But everyone should be prepared for this. This year, we're phasing this in very slowly. We're supposed to be replacing 5% of our lead service lines every year starting now. And so we're going to be replacing some of them, but we're trying to figure out how we can start to replace those without causing rate shock this year. Our utility rate inputs, getting back to those, our water cost is up 3.8%, sewage treatment to 0.2%, stormwater treatment going up 2%, and our garbage pickup cost is going up 3.5%. Because we have to start to build in more capital improvement money for lead service line replacement, our average water user will see about a 6.2% increase in your utility cost per year. And that's just the beginning. We've budgeted $125,000 of new lead service line replacement costs for this year. And that could go up to $600,000, $700,000, $800,000, $900,000 a year. So we will be looking at more in the future, but we are working to limit this as much as possible. So that is the summary of the utility rates. There's a resolution in your packet. The only thing different in the resolution than what I presented is that for non-residential water users, the ready to serve charge differs by the size of the meter. But I won't go through those numbers. Other than that, everything in the resolution is setting rates as noted in the presentation. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions anyone may have.
Any questions or comments?
Thank you, Jim. I have the question I always have for you. So you don't think that the state will let us prolong the length of time that the lead line leads can be changed out?
So they might. That's one of the things that we're working through with them right now. Is we've opened that discussion with them. In the administrative rules, that Eagle adopted, they gave you 20 years to complete this. They did give it out though that if we get an approved asset management plan, we can potentially prolong or extend that timeline out. So we're going to see if they'll let us do that. So if we could do this over 30 years instead of 20, that's a 1/3. Yeah, that'd be a 1/3 decrease every year. Yeah.
Well, and
Can I
especially,
piggyback? I'm sorry, go ahead, Ann.
go ahead.
I was just gonna piggyback on what you're saying, and I was wondering if maybe, especially with what's going on now, they would even take a closer look at doing something like that. I mean, like, have you heard it lately?
I mean, so far it's been, nope, this is a health and welfare issue, so just do it. But most communities are looking at replacing 4 or 5 or 6% of their total service lines, not 66% like we are.
Right.
So again, we're working with them.
Okay, good.
Well, and then on top of that, our water, knock on wood, has been so clean. And, the testing results have been very positive. So it's like, that seems like that could buy us a little more time.
Yes. And so the 5% is, that's our replacement requirement, as long as we keep meeting our testing requirements, which I have every faith that we will. Some communities nearby did exceed the action limit for lead in their water. If that happens, by the administrative rules, you have to start replacing 7% of your lead service lines every year.
Oh,
So, fingers crossed.
fingers crossed.
Jim, on the, sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Oh, thanks, Brett. I was just going to say, you mentioned starting on some of those. When did you anticipate starting on those first few lines?
As yet unknown, good question. We are in the middle right now of doing a cooperative bid through SACWA. So all the SACWA communities are doing this bid through our regional water entity, SACWA. That's an intergovernmental thing. So it's about 12 communities, I think, that all band together. So we may be able to use that. And then what we would probably do would be to replace the private portion of service leads for houses on streets where the water main has been replaced. And when the water main is replaced, the public service leads were replaced. And it's cheaper to do that because you're only replacing the service lead from the stop box to the house. You don't have to dig up the street. You don't have to dig up a sidewalk. It's a cheaper and easier process to do. So we think on the streets that have had their water mains replaced, we can get to our minimum required replacement this year in a pretty cost-effective way. So that bid is on the street. I think we'll be approving that at the June SACWA meeting, reviewing the bids we get in. And so at that point, then we'll just start to talk to the contractors who win that bid and try to get on their schedule to get some of our service leads replaced this year.
Thanks, Jim. And thanks, Brett.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. Jim, a question some residents may have is what kind of care would they expect to their yard, to the front of their home, if they're planning home improvements and what have you? Is it possible for them to know that their home is one of those homes that will see this and potentially see it in the next few years so that they can plan their home improvements around this thing that might happen?
Right. So we have a preliminary inventory. Once we pin down the houses that we will be replacing service lines at, we'll certainly provide as much notice as we can. A lot of the communities and contractors are using less invasive methods to replace these. So you can pull line, where basically you attach the new line to the old one and you pull it through the ground. So you go in the basement and pull it from there, and you dig a hole at the stop box, and then you go in the basement, and those are your two access points, and then you pull the line through. There's a hydrojet process where you go in the basement and you actually use a little thing of water with hydraulic pressure, and it bores a new line through the ground, and then you catch the stop box that way. So in most cases, we shouldn't be digging up a ton of front yard. It's really just going to be more of getting access to the basement and disrupting that a little bit. And that's one of the things that legally we need to work through, because residents should be aware that we do not have the budget to restore finished basements or anything else. If you've put your water meter behind a finished wall, we're going to have to break through that wall. And we're not gonna, that's gonna be something that we just can't afford. If you want to take a $15 million project and turn it into a $30 million project, that's an easy
That's
way.
an easy way.
So, yeah. So we're going to be breaking some eggs. It's unfortunate, but the long-term benefit is no more lead.
Cool. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Well, then I'm going to ask if there's which one am I on? Okay. A motion to approve the utility bill rates.
Your Honor, I move the resolution regarding the 2020-2021 utility bill rates be adopted as recommended.
Is there support?
Support.
Support.
Any further discussion? Okay, let's take a vote.
Commissioner Perry,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Budnick,
Yes.
Commissioner Wall,
Yes.
Mayor Metzger.
Yes, motion carries. The next item is establishing public hearings on Tuesday, June 9th, 2020 at 7:30 p.m. to solicit public comments on the following: amendments to the Pleasant Ridge City Code, Section 62-29, DAS/small cell/wireless facilities in the public rights of way. Jim, you again.
I'm going to say like 2 words on this one and then turn it over to Greg.
Very good.
This was an ordinance that we adopted, I think in 2017, because we were starting to see a trend of cell carriers deploying lots of small cell facilities. In the past, you think of a cell tower, it's 150 feet tall. It's got the 4 rings on the top with all the different carriers, broadcast antenna. Well, they started doing 30, 40, 50 foot tall towers that just had one kind of mast antenna on the top and putting a lot of them around. And as that started to happen, the telecoms also were lobbying all the national and state legislatures to preempt local regulation of those. So we adopted an ordinance to control those as best we could at the time. There has been, since then, there's been some different laws adopted nationally and at the state level. So we need to take our ordinance, which is out of date now because of those higher level laws, and update that to, I guess, current standards, what's on the books in Lansing and Washington, D.C. With that, take it away, Greg.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Well, that took about 90% of what I was going to say, so thanks.
Oh, good.
No, this is just another in a long series of efforts by the state legislature to erode local control. We don't have a lot of authority, but if we want to exercise what we do have, then we have to adopt a local ordinance. It is rather lengthy, but you saw the statute. Most of it is taken from the statute, and we think we need to do that to make sure we have an enforceable ordinance. We can't enforce the ordinance that we adopted in 2017. So the options are just leave it alone or adopt this and at least give us some limited ability to take care of things like aesthetics and requiring nominal permit fees, but at least we require permits. We'll get some information. We'll get a small amount of revenue from that. This ordinance, several communities have adopted similar ordinances. This one was modeled after one that Berkeley adopted a couple months ago. It is long, but it's about half the length of some of the other ordinances. So using the theory that, brevity is wit, we decided to take the more efficient approach, but it has all the provisions that the statute requires to allow us to do at least this limited amount of regulation. The one item that Jim asked me about, the aesthetic standards themselves, those are not found in the ordinance. We would develop a draft for the commission to take a look at in June. You would adopt those by resolution, and we can get you some samples as to what some other communities have done. But it regulates stuff like, how far away from the lot line, requiring no interference with clear distance and stuff like that. And again, as I pointed out in the memo, there are challenges to this both on a state and federal level. So it's always possible that they will prevail or communities will prevail. There's a group called ProTech that has several Michigan communities county, state, county, city, and township. They have been pretty aggressive in attempting to lobby. There's a case pending in the Ninth Circuit that would apply nationwide that seeks to invalidate the FCC regulations, which are similar but not identical to what Michigan adopted. So with that, I'd love to answer any questions anybody might have.
Are there any questions for Jim or Greg? There you go. Isn't that nice? Nobody wants to talk about this stuff, right? All right, well, if there are no questions, then I'm going to ask, is there a motion to establish a public hearing?
Mayor, I move that a public hearing be established for Tuesday, June 9th, 2020 at 7:30 p.m. to solicit public comments on a proposed ordinance amendment to section 62-29 of the Pleasant Ridge City Code regarding DAS small cell wireless facilities in the public rights of way.
Thank you. Is there support?
I second.
Whoop, whoop. Don't everybody.
I third.
Okay, all right. We almost have a vote. Okay, Amy, can we have a vote, please?
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Wall,
Yes.
Commissioner Budnick,
Yes.
Commissioner Perry,
Yes.
Mayor Metzger.
Yes, motion carries. Another public hearing. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the city manager's report. What's left? What's left, Jim?
I don't know what's left, not much. I guess the only thing we haven't talked about specifically tonight that would be our next upcoming event that is canceled is we did cancel the Memorial Day ceremony. Part of that is just that we wouldn't have the middle school band. They would not be available, and so we didn't think that it was worth. The governor's stay-at-home order actually extends beyond when the Memorial Day ceremony would be. So hopefully we'll be back with that next year, but that is canceled. Everything else, I think we've talked about pretty well tonight. So I'm happy to answer any questions on anything else that anyone has, but I'm not going to add anything more.
Yeah, is there anything else that is a burning issue you wanted to ask Jim about? I can see Chris has one.
I wouldn't say it's burning, but as I watched Jim put stakes down for planting new trees, I had a question. I had a few residents inquire about what type of trees were being planted, and then also if they would have any choice. So I wanted to throw that out there.
Sure. Yes. Good question. So we do have a street tree manual, which the City Commission adopted in 2015. And we went through a process of basically planning out how we were going to plant trees in the city. There's always the consideration of tree diversity. People tend to coalesce around, a few different types of trees that they want. But what we've learned from the emerald ash borer and the Dutch elm disease and what that's done to those populations, and then we have the oak wilt disease that's out there as well, is that having too much of a monoculture of trees is a bad thing. When we did our tree manual in 2015, we found that we had over half of our street trees were maples. So, if the longhorn beetle showed up here, we'd be in a bad place. So in the street tree manual, we sought to achieve diversity throughout the city in our tree species. We identify a series of trees so that no one tree is more than 10% of all trees in the city. And we identified streets where what type of tree was going to be planted on each street. By and large, the trees we chose were the best, in terms of not creating a lot of litter. And so that's identified in the manual. Now, I do know that we are planting this year. Every year we look at our streets and say, okay, which streets have the least amount of trees per linear foot, basically the lowest tree density, and that's where we publicly plant trees. This year, that's Elm Park Avenue between Oakdale and Ridge, and then Poplar Park. And so Elm Park is getting Zelkovas. They're a fantastic little tree. They fit very well in narrow tree lawns. Elm Park has 5-foot wide tree lawns in between the sidewalk and the street. That's pretty narrow. So you have to choose the right kind of tree for that situation. You don't want trees that have a lot of roots that push to the surface to damage infrastructure, to damage sidewalks when you have that narrow of an area. So Zelkovas are pretty well behaved. It's a vase-shaped tree. It doesn't create a lot of litter. It doesn't flower. And then on Poplar Park, we're planting London plane trees. Those are sycamores. There's a number of them that are around town already. And those are more stately, majestic trees. Those get large and tall. Because on Poplar Park, we have very wide tree lawns, and also we have the boulevard islands. So there's a lot more space on Poplar Park. It kind of requires a larger tree for proportion. So those are the two major trees that are being planted. And then I think all the other trees that are being planted in town were purchased through the cooperative program. So residents should know they order those trees and paid us for them. So I think we've made them aware of what in front of their house.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Guess that's it for the city manager's report. We'll move on to other business. Anybody got other business?
I have one thing.
Yes.
I have one thing that's not canceled that I want to talk about.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we have the citywide garage sale August 8th still.
Yay.
Still on, huh?
Yep.
Okay.
Something to look forward to.
Mayor,
Yes.
are there still the lawn chairs and things from the pool that are being sold to residents?
They sold out in the first half hour.
Wow.
Serious?
Right. That's what Shawnee had said. Shawnee, are you still there?
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
People
sold
wanted them.
almost everything. We have a few B left, loungers left, which means they're missing at least one or more strips. So, but anything that was good and viable is long gone. So
Very cool. Very
Yep.
cool.
Very successful.
yeah, very successful. It was nice to see people come out and see
That's
faces.
great.
So, yeah, it was really nice.
Good job.
It's a quick one from the Historical Commission. They sadly did decide to cancel the home and garden tour for the year. It's just kind of a strange thing to ask,
Yes.
strangers into your home.
Good move.
So that decision was made last week in a workshop. The museum will be closed for this month, but we'll look as we move forward and what is required of the whole city. We'll look forward at how we open up the museum and have other things to take the place of the things that go away for this summer.
Okay.
Cool.
That's a good move. That reminds me, we didn't have liaison reports, so I didn't know if there was anything that anybody had to add from their little connections. Probably not too much going on.
No.
I did want to. What?
I've been getting a lot of requests for Zoom bingo, however, Shawnee, from all of the 50 plus crowd.
I miss that crowd so much. Yeah, that's something Greg and I are looking into. Some other communities are starting to do it. We're just working out the logistics to see. We'd have to make sure we'd have a good shuffle of bingo cards and such. So that is an option that we've been looking into.
Very nice.
Well, and Shawnee, you know what? Since you're on, I think it's important to talk about that. You're going to continue to offer online activities for kids. Like, I don't know if people saw it, but one of our residents, Kaya Scott, did a really cute online bracelet making situation. So it's cute because the kids have something to look forward to, because now we're competing with online school, but obviously that's going to be going away soon. So it'll be great for the things like that.
Yep, absolutely. We've been working, and we've actually talked to Berkeley and Huntington Woods. We're going to maybe try to do some like joint virtual programming too, because everybody's trying to reinvent the wheel and everybody's just kind of doing the same thing. So we're trying to get those numbers larger. Maybe our 5 wouldn't go here, but then Berkeley's 5 wouldn't go. But then if we all do it together, then we have at least 15 people willing to participate in some of these activities. So
that's great.
Yeah. So I've been working with, most people probably remember Bridget. She used to work for Pleasant Ridge, and then she's in Huntington Woods now. And then we were working with Berkeley also.
Great.
Excellent.
Yeah. And then I just have maybe a reminder too. Greg and I have both been out in driving around, checking on the parks and such. But I've noticed lots of kids riding bicycles, which I absolutely do love to see that. But I've noticed quite a few kids with not wearing bike helmets. I just wanted to remind kids and parents to make sure that they're putting that safety first and wearing their bike helmets when riding around the city. Because May is bike safety month.
Good reminder.
It's an interesting one too, because traffic is starting to pick up a little bit. And we had a good 6 weeks where there was practically no traffic on any Pleasant Ridge Road.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably a good shout out.
Yeah, the streets have been a great way to social distance, that you can always walk off the sidewalk, and it's been very easy. So yes, that's going to be more problematic in the future.
Yeah. And I have some bike resources that I'm going to put up tomorrow. It's like bike checklists and stuff, just to make sure that your airs aren't tight, you're right size for your bicycle and stuff tomorrow. So we'll watch for those and push for good bike safety for the rest of the summer.
Excellent. I wanted to say hello to Jamie Horowitz and thank her for sitting with us the whole time.
Thank you, Jamie.
And in honor of her, I wanted to just give my usual census report as Huntington Woods continues to lead the country in terms of response. Huntington Woods, as of today, is up at 90.1% response.
Wow.
Incredible.
Oh my gosh.
That's crazy.
And Pleasant Ridge is second at 87.6. So we continue to have Huntington Woods and Pleasant Ridge 1 and 2. It's amazing. And East Grand Rapids comes in third, but then followed by Beverly Hills and Berkeley. So, and then Lathrop Village. So Oakland County is doing extremely well at the community level. So
that's amazing.
Yes.
Wow.
I want to congratulate. I mean, there comes a limit because those homes that were vacant as of April 1st do not count. I mean, they count right now. They're part of the denominator. So you'll never get to 100% until the Census Bureau is able to send people out to verify vacancies.
Oh.
So it's a matter of how many, and there's some question of how many vacancies are in the city of Pleasant Ridge. Between vacancies and Airbnbs and things like that, there is a certain limit. We can only get to a certain percentage, but we're getting a little bit closer to Huntington Woods. If we could just kind of both commit that 90%, that would be wonderful.
Yeah.
So congratulations. I mean, both cities deserve, they come through when it's time to vote, and they come through in any kind of civic duty. And so civic responsibility is very important, and congratulations to both. And they've maintained their lead since the beginning. So this is terrific.
Cool.
So
I've got a quick.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brett. Sorry.
I got a quick one for Amy. I think the Oakland County Clerk's Office sent out an email maybe a couple of weeks ago about absentee ballots. And I'm curious if there's anything that residents should know, or maybe they should wait a couple of weeks or a month or so to come in if they'd like to register for absentee voting, or maybe they can do it now. I just thought it'd be good to describe it.
So yes, they can do it now. We'll be putting an application on the website that they'll be able to fill out. They can also call and request the application. I can get them an application for August and November. We do have a fair amount of people on the permanent absentee list at this point, so they'll be receiving applications for August in the next couple of weeks. They'll be going out. We're still not sure if it's going to be an all mail-in election for August, but we're planning here for both. Whichever way it's going to go, we're going to be prepared. So I have enough applications to mail every voter an application for August, and the March applications were actually dual applications. So I have a lot of voters that have already applied for the November ballot already.
Good.
Awesome. Thank you.
Amy, so when will you receive the August ballots? I'm sorry, did you just say that?
I'll probably receive towards the end of June, but the applications will go out before that. Like people are already applying for August applications.
Yeah, I think everyone's curious of what all, they want to see some sample ballots, to see what all will be on there, which I'm sure there's other ways. Does Oakland County have that posted?
We haven't even seen the sample ballots yet.
Okay.
As soon as I get them, I put them up on the website so
Great.
that people can, head to our site and take a look at them.
Great. Thank you.
Are there any other comments, issues, questions, stories you want to tell? Nothing? Okay, then I'm going to ask, is there a motion to adjourn?
Your Honor, I move that we adjourn.
All in favor, unmute yourself and say aye.
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 We are adjourned. Thank you.
Yay. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Everyone.
Fun.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.